caught up at least a little bit there. As we mentioned, still so much information to be had and researched as far as the South Africa situation at this very moment. We definitely can say, not arrogantly or presumptuously that we saw something of this nature coming about. Why? Because we, again, mentioned that we have been following a lot of the issues dealing with South Africa coming up until this point. And this is where we get into a lot of the other interpretations of much of the news and views which had come out of South Africa from such a time over the past couple of years. Now, speaking specifically on South Africa at this very moment, we definitely are taking into account not only South Africa as a country, but the positions it has taken and the positions it's being affronted with at this very moment. And this, in one sense, being a microcosm of what the African continent and other nations, of course, are as, especially at this point, dealing with the macro at that point. Now, definitely we have mentioned so many times before, and I'm sure ones have heard and probably researched themselves, the One Belt, One Road initiative, the Shanghai Cooperative, the BRICS nations dealing with Brazil, Russia, China, India, and South Africa. Now, South Africa being the African front for this specific, socioeconomic development. And it definitely has played a securing role for a lot of what has been presented out of the East, especially dealing with China and Russia. Now, we would be amiss not to mention that to certain ones so that they also can take this into consideration when they begin to do their research on the specific events taking place now in South Africa. But again, remembering a lot of what has transpired over the past couple of years, as they mentioned there in the interview from SABC, from Prince Mashele, the incident at Marikana. Now, Marikana, of course, is a region in the northwest of South Africa. It's a very strategic and very important place as far as economics goes. There was an incident that took place there dealing with certain issues of police enforcement and dealing with a lot of the diamond, platinum, and palladium minings there. So that plays a heavy part in which, ones and ones still, it's kind of like a flesh wound that is still, unhealed at this point. And with all of the events taking place now with the presidency, the Congress, certain ones are looking to mend a lot of those issues and move forward from there. And again, we have to remember that all of these other socioeconomic and geopolitical plays are still, settling in the background, dealing with the BRICS nations, the Shanghai Cooperative, so on and so forth, and much more of the development. South Africa is, slighted and posed to be the most progressive, quote-unquote, nation in all of Africa. So this definitely coming at a time of interest, especially with everything that has been taking place. Just the past couple of weeks, there was the African Union Summit there in Addis Ababa, of course. But again, I think that it's more even interesting that this, snap election, quote unquote, this turn of events there with President Jacob Zuma, of course, as certain things have played out, it just hasn't been, a smooth ride, just to say the least, for President Jacob Zuma there in South Africa. But we, again, have to just acknowledge the changing of the guard that has been going on all across Africa. Ones and ones have been listening to I here and researching these things for themselves. Because just speaking on this at this particular time, we, of course, remember Zimbabwe with the change of the guard with Robert Mugabe to Emerson Mnangagwa. Nigeria just a few years ago from Goodluck Jonathan to President Muhammad Buhari. In Gambia just a couple of years ago from President Yahya Jammeh to President Adama Barrow. And we spoke on many occasions here also of Liberia with first woman president, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, with the changing of the guard for President George Weah. And even in Angola, longtime president and freedom fighter at that time, President Eduardo dos Santos. Many ones also know of his illustrious and very wealthy daughter. And I definitely take all of this into play as the new president of Angola, João Lourenço, comes into play. And here we have South Africa in this specific time with a quote-unquote changing of the guard as well. So in a sense, just with those mentions of those countries, brothers and sisters, that's at least, 5 to 6? At least 6 African countries completely changing the guard as far as the administration goes in a considerably short amount of time. And even so, thinking on this, a lot of the latter presidencies or the latter administrations, being in power for, I can see, at least as long as many of us have been alive, some of us longer than we've been alive. So all of these things kind of playing their part and playing their role in this specific time which we are living in. As we mentioned so many times before, there will be many more interesting facts to come out, many more things that just seem to boggle many one's minds, and it will definitely take some time to really come to grips on what's actually happening here out in the world. But yet and still, we definitely take note of all of these instances that are coming about, and we most certainly will follow up as these specific events continue to take place in our time, our brothers and sisters. So, just to say the least, and to leave certain things on the table for ones to discuss, whether amongst themselves here on the channel or, within our own prospective groups, we definitely seek to intend to revisit all of these interesting facts at one time or another. But here, our brothers and sisters, we give so much thanks again and again. Indeed, we live in interesting times. But a short moment here, our brothers and sisters, will get into our next topics. And this is URC, Discipleship Radio. Give thanks. From a scriptural position, as I mentioned from Jeremiah 16, verse 19, as it reads, O Lord, my strength and my fortress and my refuge in the day of affliction, the Gentiles shall come to thee from the ends of the earth and shall say, surely our fathers have inherited lie, vanity, and things wherein there is no profit.